Hi, and welcome back. It's me, Jill, the author of Free Will, the book that I'm reading here online, chapter by chapter. If you're new here, check out my channel. You can click on my little profile button in the description there and go to videos. You can check out any previous videos, any of the previous chapters that we've been reading there. The full list of everything is there. And for those of you that have been following along, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you, and I hope you're enjoying it. So when we last read, we found out that I was going to be moving to a different state, mostly for reasons involving getting away from, the face-to-face shunning on such a regular basis. There was a few reasons, moving to where my dad was because I kind of felt like I needed some family, and my kids needed family too. So anyway, so now we're going to talk about how that change transpired. So we're going to go into chapter 38. So my dad and Marianne would be living right next door in Oregon. My dad told me that the house two doors down from them was going to be available for rent. It was a 3-bedroom house with breathtaking views of the lake and the mountains and hills across the lake. The rent was only $800 a month. I grabbed it. What a relief to know that I'd have loving, supportive family right next door during this major transition. It was a funky little house, but it sat right on Devil's Lake. Beside the incredible view, deer wandered through the yard every day, and a herd of elk frequented the neighborhood. The bald eagle, osprey, seagulls, egrets, blue jays, and hummingbirds were daily visitors too. What a peaceful setting we would be in. Before I moved up, Dad and Marianne had painted the interior of the place for us and cleaned everything up so beautifully. I was amazed and so grateful for all the time and energy they put into that, just so that we would be comfortable. I installed new carpeting and lighting throughout the place. I made my cool little bachelorette pad warm and welcoming. I turned the extra bedroom into my meditation room. I would be at peace there. My kids would be safe and sound. All would be well. But it was anything but easy getting there. I landed in Niatsu in a big moving truck with my sister following in my Audi. Supportive as always, Sandy had volunteered to help me get there, and her daughter, my niece Karina, would fly back home to California after helping us get moved in. Between the truck and my car, we carted 3 kids, a dog, a cat, and everything I still owned across 2 states. Before I left San Clemente, I was waiting for my big settlement check from the sale of our house and the divorce. At the same time, I was loading the monstrosity of a moving truck. I came down with a bad cold. I kept taking vitamins and supplements, but it was getting worse. The giant truck was jam-packed, fully loaded, and sitting in the driveway. The house was clean and empty. I waited 3 days for the check because of escrow holdups, but it still wasn't ready. I had to go. The truck was costing me a shit ton of money, and I couldn't waste any more time. I made arrangements for the check to be mailed, and as sick as a dog, I climbed in that cab and we hit the road. We had planned to drive straight through to get the drive over with as quickly as possible, but by the end of the first night, my cold had escalated. My tonsils were so swollen I couldn't talk or even swallow water. We decided to stay in a hotel where I spent a feverish, sleepless night gasping for air through my swollen tonsils. In the morning, we found a walk-in clinic, so we loaded up the caravan and I saw a doctor in an offbeat little town that I didn't even know the name of. The tiny doctor was 99 if he was a day. He was kind and gentle. I got a prescription for an antibiotic. He said I had strep throat and tonsillitis. We got back on the road again right after I took my first dose of meds. Thoughts flooded my mind as I drove. Why? Why am I so sick right now? I was tackling the biggest move of my life, and I was running a fever while carrying the weight of my world on the weight of the world on my shoulders and the weight of my belongings in this big truck. Anger surged at the injustice of all of it, but I felt so sick I couldn't even stay angry. Tears streamed down my face as I drove up the interstate. The third day into this trip, we all stopped for food, which I couldn't even eat because of the pain in my throat. My kids were so anxious. This huge move following the divorce was taking its toll on them. My being sick was hindering my usual words of comfort and tenderness with them. I was sensing their crabbiness and frustration with the situation, but felt powerless to help. I parked the big U-Haul truck at the far end of the parking lot where there was enough room. As we all walked through the parking lot toward the restaurant, the kids began to aggravate each other, and a physical altercation ensued. Somebody hit somebody in the lips, and blood was drawn. One was claiming it wasn't their fault, and the other one was crying. I looked at them in frustration and disappointment. I couldn't do anything, not even speak. Tears again rolled down my face. The kids felt terrible and made up, apologized, and offered to help me with anything they could. Their hugs strengthened me to move forward. These kids are the most beautiful humans I know, good souls to the core. They are loving and thoughtful people. They were letting out their angst on each other while I was taking it out on myself. Would this fucking trip ever end? Yes, it finally did. Dad and Marianne actually drove 3 hours south to meet us so that my dear dad could drive the truck back for me for the end of the trip. I slept in the car while Marianne drove me to our new home. I was exhausted. Sleep felt like the most precious gift I'd ever received. Arriving at the tiny little ramshackle house after a 3-hour nap in the car gave me enough energy to work with everybody to unload the truck so that I could get it back to the U-Haul without more penalties. We had pizza ordered from the Hot Creek Cafe and all hung out next door at Dad's house. I downed my antibiotics and ibuprofen with a strong martini. I shared my king-size air mattress with my son that night. Sleep pulled me in like quicksand. As I drifted off, my son obviously pondering the modest furnishings and our new, starkly different, humble surroundings, said quietly, "I can't believe we have to make our own ice." I grinned at the innocent wonder in that comment. "Don't worry, bud. I did it when I was a kid. I'll show you how. Night. Love you." So that was pretty rough little trip on the way up. So now in the next chapter, we'll kind of get into how life started there. Starting my new life as a single woman in Oregon was pretty cushy. I had the love and support of my dad and my stepmom, and they were right next door. I had received the settlement that was enough to get me started on my own. I settled into my comfy, modest little pad and took my time looking for work. I didn't feel pressured or rushed because I had very little overhead and a bit of money in the bank. I figured it would be easy to start doing design work after I got settled. I had spent a pretty hefty amount of money moving us out of state and then spent quite a bit of money fixing up the little house and furnishing it. I also had a giant attorney fee to pay off and wanted to purchase a new car. Before too much time passed, I saw my little nest egg shrinking more quickly than I expected, so I started to get real anxious to get to work. In California, most of the design work that I had acquired had come from referrals from previous clients. They'd tell friends I did their house, and those clients would lead me to another, and so on and so on. But now in Oregon, I would have to start from scratch. I had good references and a portfolio of work to show prospective clients, but I had no contacts. I started advertising my services on Craigslist. I made a list of local contractors that might need the services of a designer and contacted them. introducing myself and offering my services. I also reached out to real estate agencies and asked them to pass my name on to clients buying or selling houses, hoping I could do some staging work, which I had done a bit of also. After weeks of canvassing and advertising, I was getting zero prospects. I was starting to get nervous about money and thought I may have to put off self-employment for a while. I found out pretty quickly that interior design is not popping off on the Oregon coast. Then one day, my dad came over and proposed a business venture. He asked if I would like to open a kite store with him. He had been retired for a while now and said he would enjoy having a project to work on. We would be 50-50 partners. He and his wife had owned two different very successful kite stores in town over the last couple of decades. They knew the business well and had well-established relationships with vendors, etc. I, of course, had run the stores in California, so I knew what I was getting into. It sounded like a great idea. Yes, design was my love, but for now, I didn't see that happening. I needed income, and being self-employed sounded a lot more appealing than finding a job in this tiny little town. I was thrilled and grateful for the opportunity. We discussed how much we would need to invest, and it felt like the perfect plan. We got started almost immediately. We picked a location in Depot Bay, a town about 25 miles south of where we lived. It was great. I was working with my dad every day. We picked a name for the store. We named it after the Greek god of the west wind, Zephyrus. We created a cool logo, commissioned signs, and bought furnishings as we planned our layout. There were many creative aspects to setting up the store that I found so enjoyable. We were up and running within a month or two of the initial conversation. Working in the store was a delight. It was a beautiful boutique with a festive atmosphere. Zephyrus sat on Highway 101 directly across from the black, rugged, rocky coastline, spewing enormous waves from a spouting horn. The store was full of kites, toys, and art. Aromatic candles filled the air with pomegranate, sage, or sandalwood. It had an inviting yet playful yet lovely ambiance. Our customers were mostly comprised of families on vacation or older retired couples traveling. I had a great time meeting people. Our customers were fun and pleasant to visit with as they were on vacation and in great spirits. It was such a pleasure to be able to be working with my dad. This was the most time that we ever spent together. I felt such appreciation to have this time with him. It was truly a gift to go to work each day. After a few months, I ended up moving to a house a bit closer to the store in order to shorten my commute. And because the little old house I had been renting ended up having some little old house problems, I was ready for a little more comfort. I found a newish, cute little 3-bedroom house at the south end of town. It had a nice deck with a view of the ocean from one direction and a view of the mountains from the other. Across the street was a forest. We still had deer around all the time. We even had a Bigfoot encounter, but that is a story for another time. One thing I was dreading about running a retail business was the bookkeeping. My husband had always kept the books for all of our businesses. I was very intimidated about taking that on. As a newly single person, I had only just begun paying my own personal expenses. Taking on the books for the store took some serious effort, but eventually, with patience and help of Dad and Marianne, I learned how to take care of all of it. I also learned what my limitations were and had a wonderful, smart accountant that helped when I got stuck. I was so proud of myself for diving into that part of the business. I had learned to take care of my personal finances even better through this process. This experience had taught me that I was going to have to push myself sometimes into uncomfortable places so that I could get to where I wanted to be and to accomplish what I had set out to. I knew that being self-sufficient was an important thing for me, and now I felt like I had it wired. So off to the races, having this little business, which was working out great. And as you guys learned in previous videos and previous chapter readings, I lost my dad last year. So reflecting on this is sweet, sweet memories. So incredibly grateful that I got to share this business with him. It was incredible to have that opportunity. I mean, as you learned earlier, my dad got disfellowshipped. He was an elder when I was a little kid, and he got disfellowshipped when I was not quite 11, and eventually just got reinstated once, but then got disfellowshipped and left permanently. So really wasn't a witness from the time that I was 11, and so the time that I had spent with him was so sporadic. And I think I went over that earlier too. I kind of got criticized by anybody that found out I was going to visit my dad who was disfellowshipped, even though it was a million years ago. He got disfellowshipped in 1975. So the year that everything went, Armageddon was supposed to come. But anyway, so starting this business with him was we had so much fun. We just had a great time. Although we always were fighting over what music we were playing in the store. He was going for blues and I was going for hip hop probably. But just kidding, we didn't fight about it. We just teased each other. He had such a great sense of humor. Okay, so we'll do one more chapter, chapter 40. After the store was well established, one of my biggest priorities as a single woman was to get health insurance. During my entire marriage, I did not have coverage. So I immediately found a health insurance plan for the kids and was able to get good coverage for myself as well. As soon as I got this set up, I started researching plastic surgeons. I was going to get reduction mammoplasty, breast reduction. In general, I'm not a fan of plastic surgery. Even though I'd always dreamed of straightening my crooked ski slope nose, I knew I'd never actually go through with it. No judgment, to each his or her own, but it seems so radical to go under the knife to improve appearances. But my lovely lady lumps were getting out of control. Between neck and back pain, headaches, and deep grooves in my shoulders, the discomfort from my larger-than-life breast was a daily challenge. This surgery had been on my mind for years. Years earlier, I had gone to a lingerie specialist to see if a proper and better fitting bra would ease some of the discomfort. As this experienced lingerie saleswoman put her eyes back in her head after measuring me, she announced that my true size was 32 double I. Yes, I said double I. I used to tell my husband that I only had eyes for him. Years later, the situation had only escalated. Well, not really escalated, grown, magnified, and expanded to their full glory. I was desperate enough to fix the situation, and surgery was the only real solution. I found a surgeon a couple hundred miles from where I lived on the coast. She had an excellent reputation, and her gallery of work was stellar. I was nervous. Surgery seemed so daunting. They told me it was a pretty major surgery and that it would take about 3.5 hours, and the recovery would be time-consuming. Unselfish and generous as always, my sister Sandy flew up to California to be by my side through the whole thing. She took me to the hospital and drove me home when it was time. Before this time of life, I pretty much took for granted that I would always have support if me or my kids were sick or hurt. We would have been surrounded by many, many people in a time of need or crisis. But that was not our life anymore. Our life support, our family, our loved ones had shrunk to a skeleton crew. But the few loving and loyal friends that remained were outstanding. My appreciation and gratitude for them swelled. Thank goodness I still mattered to someone. Thank goodness for my sister. The surgery went perfect. They removed over 3 pounds of tissue off each side. My girls were now virtually half the size of their former selves. Oh, and they now defied gravity. Nice perk. See what I did there? Wow, what a difference. Coming out of surgery, my sister got to witness me enjoying the wonderful high from all the drugs. I was spouting my conviction that there should be chocolate flavored carpeting and that it would be delicious, and other crazy nonsense. They gave me Percocet for pain management, which was fabulous. Talk about a happy pill. After Sandy brought me home, she went out and got me divine vegetable risotto from my favorite restaurant. She helped the kids with everything so that I could just sleep and heal. She had to get back to her family and work, so they arranged for that Cindy, my old stepsister, could take over and help me. Cindy dropped everything and drove up from California and stayed with me after Sandy left. She cooked and cleaned and took me to the doctor. She stayed for over a week. Thank goodness for her too. I am so incredibly grateful and lucky to have such kind sisters that would go to such lengths to be by myself through this traumatic event. I did have a couple complications after the procedure. Cindy militantly ordered me to sit down every time I got up to do anything myself. I don't know how I could have gotten through all of it without the loving support of Sandy and Cindy. My dad, of course, covered for me at work too. Everybody was so thoughtful and patient. I had to be immobilized for a time because of the complications. After receiving those orders from the doctor, I came home to find a notice in the mail from my landlord. I was being evicted. I was renting month to month, and the owners decided they wanted to sell the house. I had 3 weeks to vacate. You have to be fucking kidding me. I'm sorry, I didn't realize how much I swear in this. So, anyway, I should be editing myself or something. I had to dig deep to summon the strength in me to face this, let alone actually move. I begged the homeowners for more time because of my circumstances, and they barely budged, but at least gave me an extra 2 weeks. This was my third move in a year and a half. Because my son was in school and because of scheduling issues, my daughter and I ended up doing the entire move by herself in the rain. It was insane. Moving an entire house full of stuff into a 3-story split-level condo. We mustered Herculean effort to get it done. We were going on pure adrenaline. We creatively wrangled my beautiful gray sectional up the flights of stairs, piece by piece, and end over end, all the while being careful not to bump or damage my healing bijou breast. By the time we finished, we looked at each other in shock of our accomplishment. The courage and sheer strength of everything I had accomplished during this first year and a half of being on my own was a real confidence builder. Each turn brought challenges that intimidated or downright scared the crap out of me. Always being surrounded with the loving support of my kids added to my courage and strength. We settled into this great new condo sitting on the Newport Bay. I had a lovely balcony that I loaded with plants and flowers. We could watch kite surfers sail through the bay. Each morning there, I would walk a couple minutes to the Newport Bridge, hike over it, and head down to the beach. I so enjoyed these hikes. I connected with myself and with spirit. The beauty in nature warmed me and comforted and healed my soul. I also found a nice quiet spot on the bay near the Newport Aquarium where I'd find myself perched on a little wooden bench looking out on the sparkling water. Surrounded by seals, heron, and bald eagle, I had some of the most profound meditations and inspirations here. Okay, so a little bit of humor, a little bit of you know, just more development of what it was like to live as a single person, and really getting really comfortable being worldly in a bunch of ways, which we'll go into more in the next couple of chapters. And what was I going to say about this chapter? There was something in particular. Oh, well, if it's important, it'll come back. So I'm really glad you guys are here. As always, I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time. and I hope you come back to finish up. I mean, we still have a few more chapters to go, but really glad you're here. And I'm not going to bug you about liking and subscribing and commenting. I think I just did. But anyway, so happy to be having you listening, and take care.